Take two. God damn it.
I'm gonna say all that stuff again.
I know.
So
So
Boramy, for the first time so far, has forgotten to record my voice, the most important voice of the Altacast. So, 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 in the
at
description
least
is a link to the video of Boramy talking to himself. Not really. I don't think he'll
I don't know
upload
if we'll
that.
post that.
That would be great though.
Maybe if people really want to watch it, maybe so it'll be like an unlinked video or something.
Uh,
But
so
okay, so yeah, thankfully it was only the first part of the Altacast. It was
yeah, not the Q&A.
not the Q&A, so we only wasted half an hour. Um, it was so good as well. We were like high energy and everything. Like there are
Okay.
other Altacasts where I wish this had happened.
Okay, so just a recap of the no, okay, okay. So now I got to remember. We're talking about archery this Outcast, and the reason we're talking about archery is because there will be some archery changes coming with the forest, maybe even before the forest, and the reason we're lining it up with the forest, we'll go into a little bit more. But it's in summary for now, it's because there will be some new creatures and new wood types, which are going to change the way that archers want to operate and the importance of archers in your squad. Before we delve into that, though, we're going to. Oh no! One more thing. We didn't do a big update, as we mentioned in the Outcast way back at the start of the year. This year's not going to have a lot of big updates, and we really felt that for the first time. In the every update up to this coming update, up to this past update, sorry, we didn't really specifically push for content. It's just that we had things that we wanted or needed to be done, and so it just happened that we had quite an amount to release each fortnight. And some of them have felt a little less, some of them have felt a bit more significant. This just happened to be the first one where we really were just like, we don't have anything. We have a couple bug fixes, but that's it. And that is because we are focusing so much on the forest. And we will hopefully be pushing out some of the, maybe, well, not definitely, but hopefully we'll have some features of the forest, such as maybe some of these archery changes that may make it to the public version of the game before the forest actually is released. But again, we're not. I just wanted to reiterate the fact that the reason updates may seem a little less substantial than you would expect is because we're focusing on the forest, and Victor and Serena are focusing on optimizations. And once your team is all focusing on other things, there's no one to focus on the bi-weekly update. So
yeah,
that's that. Anyway, on to what are we working on?
Yep. So Joel and I are still working on the forest, as we mentioned, particularly to do with some of the water features. Some of this, if you want to see a written version of what we're doing, feel free to read the Reddit post that we made, because we outlined some of this stuff so that we let people know what's actually happening if we're not having this official update. But basically, the water side of things involves rivers and waterfalls being a part of the forest. The forests are completely procedurally generated, so we just have to make sure that that the rule set can create some nice looking stuff, that we have good control over it, and that it works quite nicely. There's some slightly new-ish features that to do with sound, for example, that got put in. So you can hear it, and we don't do it by just spawning a ton of audio sources, so it's a fairly nice and efficient way to do it. But yeah, in this version of the forest, water is going to play about as crucial a part as it has in the game so far, where you're not going to be able to swim or fish
Not very
or go
crucial
underwater.
yet.
So it's not super crucial.
Yeah.
But it's a nice kind of visual variation, and you will be able to kind of wade through it the way you kind of wade through water in the current game, and you'll also be able to fill up your liquid source from it. So you just
Your buckets.
grab a bucket and get some water out.
In case
Those
you
are
want a
the
bucket
thing-
of water.
Yeah.
Or cooking in the forest. Like you can find some veggies,
Yeah.
scoop up some stream water, make a stew.
Yeah.
Yeah. In general, as Boramy said, it's not kind of vital to the play experience. But one of the aspects of the forest that's important to us is making it feel like it's a living, breathing place. And things like wind or water is what adds the passive life to the world, and then obviously creatures on top of that. And also blue is so much nicer than only brown and green.
Yeah.
So it's really nice to see some color variation there.
Yeah.
We're done. I'm not sure if we said it. Round 2 of Altacast or round 1, but we're finishing up today. We're finishing up today with the water stuff. Today's Friday for us, and what that means is we'll be on to, I guess, the next tasks. Primarily for me, that's going to be spending some time looking into ways that we can optimize both the generation and the performance in general of the forest. It's not awful, but it does need some work. And I think Boramy is... I don't know what Boramy is doing next. He's still got some more river configuration stuff to do, but the tools are mostly done.
Yeah, I've got to do a bit more river work, just kind of making it look nice around rivers. And then I'm going to be working on some more kind of landmark variations around the place so that you really feel like there's like you're exploring a new place every time you go somewhere. And then I'm going to be working on some more of the content side of things, which is kind of where the spoilers are at. So yeah, that's me. Victor and Misdemeanor are continuing their optimization work. It's fairly, it's a pretty slow grind still for them. A lot of it's to do with R&D things where they figure out spots and these actions that we can take to improve them. But a lot of these actions are in the vein of kind of redoing things to optimize for this kind of solution procedure that they've kind of developed. Like, for example, in the post, we mentioned the atlasing of textures and materials. And that's something that works best on a specific kind of UV layout for textures and models. So there needs to be like a pass over a lot of the game's assets to make sure that they're compatible for this proposed solution. And that's something that we're not pulling the trigger on just yet, because we just want them to accumulate these actions so that we can officially dedicate time to it.
Yeah. So yeah, the TLDR of that is the updates aren't coming in the next update, or obviously in the past update. Like they're not being done. They're being researched and sort of proven as concepts, because a good way to optimize things is to find the problems and find the solutions rather than just fixing everything as you go. Because it might be that the thing that you find first might take 10 hours for a 1% improvement, but later down the line you might find something that takes 10 hours for a 10% improvement. So it's much better to try and find that and prioritize.
So some of the tests they've done, for example, includes the like they've done the atlasing, and then some of the assets just look bad, and that's just how they kind of leave it, because now they found and then they look at the number of stuff without worrying too much about the visual aspect of things, because the art side is where it's going to take a long time to kind of get through. Yeah.
So there's been lots of stuff there, and it's very promising. I'm very happy with even some things as minor as optimizing, like reducing the mesh count on the player, merging the eyeballs got merged with the rest of the player, for instance. Like those sorts of things. Like it's small things, but we know that it's such a it's a good direction. It's a good velocity, good direction. So very happy with that.
Yeah.
Timo has been working with Stefan, our programming intern. Stefan's been working on rewriting the dashboard. It's kind of a side project. For many of you who don't know, the dashboard is how server owners can interact with their servers. But it's also going to be a place for other sort of operations, like moderators being able to investigate things or whatever. So being able to have that get sort of brought up to date is going to be nice. And other than that, Timo's going to be today. We're going to have a meeting with him, and he's going to be joining Boramy and I on joining Boramy and me on the forest update content.
I think it's Boramy and I usually.
No, it's you get rid of the Boramy and see which one makes sense. So joining me, not joining I. So it's Boramy and me.
What? Okay.
Would you say? Yeah. Anyway, he's going to be joining us on the forest update sort of stuff. Our meeting today is going to actually determine exactly what that is. It could be some of the archery things we talk about today. It could be a whole host of things.
Yeah.
Soul? Do you want to talk about Soul stuff?
Let's go through Sebastian and Tiana first.
Yeah.
So they're primarily doing. So they're fully on cosmetics. You can see some of their stuff coming out tomorrow if you're watching this Altacast when it releases publicly. The day after tomorrow if you're a supporter. So they're going on really well. Like they're getting more autonomy, which has been able to free up Serena for her task, which is nice. Like her and I still do a little bit of setup work for when the store rolls out. But other than that, on the art production, Serena's been able to be pretty free, which I think she welcomes, so that she can focus on being the technical art lead that she is to solve some of the other game's problems, as opposed to kind of working on this content cycle that we've established quite firmly at the company. And it's good to see that Tiana and Sebastian have been able to work with that system and gain that level, because it means that we've got a pretty robust method of doing things.
There's some pretty cool cosmetics coming out. Is that hairstyle coming out?
I don't know
tomorrow?
that it is. We'll see.
Oh damn! There's a really cool hairstyle coming up.
Yeah. I'm not super sure which of the stuff they've made is coming out yet. I'll have to check with Serena, but they're all of the stuff they've made is looking so good. So
it looks really good. Yeah.
And then lastly, Sol is working on some pretty exciting stuff. He's working on combat trials, which are essentially these mini dungeons. They share a slightly different format to your typical combat encounter, because you basically enter a chamber, lock yourself in there, and then you fight enemies and solve puzzles that come one after another in some ways, or in like a bit of a sequence. If you fail by dying and everybody loses, and
everyone dead, in your party,
everyone that's
your party enters.
Yeah,
it locks behind you. Yeah,
and if everyone dies, then the whole thing resets. If one person survives, they can still try and pursue everything and try and go for the reward if they want. And yeah, so it's a bit of a different experience, because you can't just kind of keep dying and try and whittle out this challenge. You have to try and take it all in one go and have everything you need. and that's gonna play the role of unlocking some slightly more, uh, I guess, special unlocks throughout the town.
Town upgrades.
Yeah, so they act as town upgrades, the things you get out of them.
Right now, there's no upgrades in the town. There's unlocks, like you unlock extra mold racks or deep crafting stations, but there's nothing that you can do, and then you have to upgrade, which might be things that happen in the future. And I'll give an example. This isn't what Soul Stuff is tying into, but for instance, if we made it so that the chiseling deck only supported 2 long things, and then you needed an upgrade to make it support 3 long things, I know if we rolled that out, it would feel like a nerf to a lot of you guys until you get that upgrade. But it's those sorts of things that will help us control the experience of progression. So you start off where you're like smaller handles, and now we can make full length handles, and that's going to be much better for our shovels and much better for our whatever, like I don't know what you're making, but yeah.
And yeah, so it's gonna be pretty interesting. We're pretty excited by that stuff, and having puzzles and stuff is a good experience for us to kind of try out creating this challenge. And whilst it's handmade, so it's not procedural, so when you go and do it, when you go do these specific ones again, they're gonna be the exact same. But letting us creatively create these challenges gives us a good template to work from for when we create a procedural system, so we know what the target is. Experience-wise, we're like, is this procedural system good? Well, no, because it hasn't been able to replicate something in the same vein as what we've made here.
It also provides a good platform for you guys to give us feedback, so that when we do either make changes to these trials in the future, or
as we work on the procedural stuff,
or as we work on procedural dungeons,
we'll be able to know like what parts of this work and didn't work, and so now we can make sure that the system takes that into account. Yeah. Okay. And now let's talk about archery.
Round 2.
Round 2. Yeah, we're a little slower this time on the on getting through everyone, but
that's because I was here. Last time I left halfway.
Yeah.
Okay. There's so much feedback, Boramy. I hope this doesn't show in the YouTube video.
No, it doesn't. Yeah, sorry. I'll lower my volume a bit. Yeah, it doesn't. Because if anything, it would be synced up perfectly. Because it's coming out of your speakers into my microphone. Of my speakers into my microphone.
True.
So it's always in sync. Yeah.
No stress then.
Yeah.
No stress.
Like I'm aware.
Okay.
Where did we begin with archery?
What did we talk about? So before we talked about it in the first take, Boramy and I accumulated a list of things to talk about, and then during talking about it, Boramy brought up stuff that wasn't on the list. But the good thing is, it's on the list this time. So
yeah. So pretty much
less surprises for me. Yeah.
So the biggest difference, the big question is no, that's not the right way to start this. So far currently with archery. So far currently with archery, we've had you only have 2 bows at the moment. Compared to the variety of like melee weapons that you get, there's only 2 bows, and they're not really that different. You can craft things on the metal bow, and you can't craft a metal bow. You can craft a wooden bow, but you can't add attachments to that wooden bow. Some of the things that the bow itself is in control of are things like the distance the arrow shoots, how far you have to draw back to let go, and the curve for that, for how much force gets expelled. And that's pretty much it when it comes to the bow, as it currently stands. Then obviously there's the arrow itself, which has the fletching, which affects the accuracy, and the arrow tip, which affects the damage that you're outputting.
Or the effect.
Or
like
the effect.
An explosion.
Yeah. Yeah, because you can put 2 Rabata shards on arrows. You can make explosive arrows. You can make damaging arrows. You can make arrows that have crystal gems on them, so you can kind of see where they land a bit better. And you can make... you can attach grass clumps to arrow shafts as well, so you can kind of light your way down caves.
Yeah.
And those things are all kind of done using the existing crafting system. So it's... but bows don't have... Aside from those things, they don't really have their own unique statistic behavior.
And also, those things aren't super flexible. There's no reason that I would want to use the worst fletching. I would always use the best one for the most accuracy. I'm always going to use the same arrow shafts because there's only one type of wood. And I'm going to use the best metal that I can afford to put on my arrowheads. And then in terms of bow, I think most people will opt for a metal bow, maybe with crystal spikes on it, so that they get a bit of light. But for the most part, like most archers end up pretty much effectively having the same kit, and not a lot of room to customize that kit. So some of the things we're going to be talking about today are ways that their loadout might actually really change from archer to archer, and also some of the system changes that we'll be making as well. Before we dive into that, though, I think I touched on it at the start. Why are we even talking about archery in relation to the forest update? There's 2 reasons. One is the forest is going to have a bunch of wood types. So the forest is going to have different types of trees that you can cut down. Some, like akin to mining, some might require better tools to chop them down. Some might be rarer or take longer to regrow. And once you've gotten those different those different wood types, not only can you make different types of wooden bows, but you can make different types of arrow shafts. So there's suddenly more variation. We go from one arrow shaft type, to however many wood types there are worth of arrow shaft types. Likewise, we go from one wooden bow to, I'm not sure if there'll be new wooden bows, but whatever, even if there's no new wooden bows, we'll go from one type of wooden bow to the number of wood types of wooden bows and the number of wood types of slingshots, for instance. And handles, it'll tie into handles as well, but handles aren't the focus of this episode. The flip side, the second aspect is the purposes of archery will change a little bit. Right now, when you shoot an enemy, like a Gotera, Tarabata, Sprigal, whatever, they tend to run towards you. So if you engage at 50 meters, if you miss, generally there's no downsides. If you hit, obviously the downside of you missed, but like you can try again without much changing. If you hit, then they'll tend to start walking towards you or stay still and attack you from where they are. And so you're choosing the distance that you're shooting them from. You can you can walk up to 30 meters and engage, or you can walk 50 meters and engage, and that distance is only going to get smaller. With the forest, though, we're probably going to have a bit more of a hunting sort of vibe to some of the combats you enter. So there could be situations where you shoot something, and instead of running towards you or attacking you from a distance, it runs away. But they could also be aware of you being too close to them or too loud, or you shooting an arrow and missing them. And this could cause, if they run away, then you're actually severely worse off. Even if you land a hit, but you don't land a hit well, then, or you use a weak arrowhead for whatever reason, they might take damage, but they might still run away. Meaning you might literally not be able to kill them once they start running away. They might be gone out of your sight faster than you can even chase them. So it might be really important that you land a good hit from a fair distance away still, because you can't get too close. And maybe you cripple them, maybe you stun them or something. But the point is, archery is very different in that situation. And fundamentally, it's not a situation that you can replace with a sword. It's not like fighting a Gotera where I can shoot it with a bow, but Boramy can just walk up with an axe and hit it. If we're talking about something that will run away, then Boramy can't just walk up with his axe, because it's always going to be away from him. It's always going to be a distance. Anyway, so all that said, what are we going to change about archery systems, and what's that going to mean?
Well, I'm glad you asked, Joel.
I'm glad I asked.
So, in the new system of things, if you were to, you might create a bow that has that's a bit more specific to the types of arrows you want to make, and the type of archer you want to be. So, for example, you might have a bow that is like flexibility, something that we talk about a lot, where it affects your drawback capability. And that means that a more flexible bow is easier to draw back. You can shoot at a pretty good distance, lighter arrows, and you can probably pull it faster and stuff, and like actually do the drawback faster.
So it would be good for rapid firing.
Yeah.
I imagine it would probably be good for...
It'd probably be good for like short to mid distance.
If you wanna like utilize quick shot a lot, I imagine it would be a good bow for quick shot sort of combat. And probably your general combat. I don't think it would be a good hunting bow necessarily.
Yeah, it's a bit more like a short bow, and then you might have, then you might have a bow that's like less flexible. It's larger, probably heavier, and it shoots with a lot of power, but you can only draw back so fast. So it's kind of introducing this rate of fire concept to bows. On top of that, these strong bows might be really good at shooting heavier arrows because they have that much power, but trying to shoot lighter arrows with it might cause them to lose accuracy more so than they normally would, just because they're being shot with so much violent force that they just get whipped out, and then they act erratically from that.
So there's this concept of weight that Boramy talked about.
Yeah, so and that ties into the wood types that you might make your arrow shaft
and the arrowheads
and probably the fletching to some degree as well. So kind of diversifying the crafting process.
I might need to do more research into this, but it could be that some fletchings are actually really good or bad with particular weight arrows as well. I'm not sure. I'll need to do more research into that, but it might be that if you're making light arrows, you want to use this color feather. Whereas if you're making heavier arrows, maybe a different feather will actually improve your accuracy for that. But the point is, all these components of your arrow kind of need to work well with your
bow,
your type of bow. You can't just say, let's just shoot any arrow out of any bow, because there's kind of this, you're building up an identity of your archery through both your choice of arrows and your choice of bow, and it needs to work together to be a functional unit.
And a change to bows to bow and arrows that you might see come earlier than the forest update or some of these other archery changes is how inaccuracy currently works. So pretty much currently we have this, when you fire a rusty arrow, it shoots in this cone, anywhere along this cone. So if you're trying to point blank shoot something, you might still miss it because like a 5-degree inaccuracy potential over a distance could still be like a meter off, depending on your range. So it's immediately like inaccurate, which is not really how bows and arrows really work. It was
Yeah, you can be 5 meters away and
yeah, and you'll
miss
just
your
completely
target.
miss. So the changes that we're not even considering, we're definitely gonna make it.
I mean,
Is that
we're gonna try our best to make it.
arrows will deviate over like after a distance. So a rusty arrow, for example, might be perfectly accurate when fired up to 10 meters, but then after 10 meters, instead of going straight out, you might see it start to bend out a little bit in a direction. And that means that we can really guarantee that arrows you'll be able to use them because you can hit something with it. And it might also mean that you really get to choose what kind of arrow you care about. Like maybe you've got an arrow build that makes it very inaccurate after 40 meters. Like it starts to deviate completely, but you don't really care because the way you play is always within that kind of short range. Alternatively, you might be someone who really wants accuracy, and so you try and always create like these very precise arrows so you could be this sniper kind of shooting from a distance.
I'm drawing a diagram for people who are I don't know, a bit more visual sort of understanders. So
this deviation change may come a bit earlier, because it would already help with the current set of arrows that you might have, where collecting red feathers is a bit harder than blue ones because I think they're a bit rarer. So maybe if you're not a super long range archer who needs the red feathered arrows, you could use the blue ones for your mid range shots and your rusty ones for your short range.
Here we go.
All right,
So on this side it shows the current system, where even if we look at this, say that's 5 meters in, we've already got a huge amount of sort of variation. And
hopefully
by the
they
time
can
you
count
hit,
those pixels, but yeah.
the point is you lose accuracy right at the start, meaning short distances are still bad. Whereas in our new system, we kind of want them to curve a little bit over time, meaning if you do a 5 meter shot, look, that's way more accurate. It's still pretty much spot on. And it's not until you get further that it's really curved out.
Yeah. Do you want to? This is the diagram that Joel's kind of describing, where this is the new arrow types, this is the current version.
Yeah.
Yeah. In case it was too pixelated.
So it might be the case that the trade-off you're going for. So right now it's possible to get perfect accuracy arrows, which is probably a concept that won't exist forever. Instead, you'll have extremely high accuracy up to a set distance, and you'll reach this point where you're going, okay, let me do a trade-off for. Maybe you're trading off accuracy for firing speed or accuracy for damage, and it reaches a point where you're like, I don't sacrificing fire speed or sacrificing damage just so I can shoot accurate 10 meters further doesn't really matter, because I can already shoot extremely accurately up to 50 meters, and I'm never doing archery past 50 meters. Like, I'm not sniping things. I'm generally 20 meters away. So I would rather damage than more accuracy. And these sorts of decisions are what are actually going to start causing variation in how archers do things. You might find that another archer doesn't like Valiant arrows because they're so heavy that the bow needs to be a slower bow or something like that. And instead they'd rather have a short bow, use silver arrows, which are much lighter, and be able to fire them off more quickly. They're also using a different wood type because this wood type is a little, I don't know, maybe it's a little sturdier, so it breaks less, but that does create a bit more deviation. But like, I don't know. The point is, all these different things might mean that you and another archer have different kits, just like I prefer to use one type of weapon and someone else Like I might prefer long swords and Boramy might prefer short swords. And we want that sort of variation to exist for archers as well.
Yep.
Okay.
So yep, that's it for archery, I think, pretty much, right?
The other thing that we didn't mention, well, I mean, it's so hard to tell. We want to improve impacts. Is a quick note, because right now sometimes you'll shoot something and it won't even detect the hit. That is something we do want to improve. We are aware of that. We don't want to throw in all these improvements and changes to archery and still have people saying, this is great, but if my arrows don't actually even deal damage because of some buggy impact detection, then what's the point? So we really, really do want to look into that and improve that.
Yeah.
And the final remark I want to make is that we're also setting our mind on the fact that archery might tie into more things into the future as well, such as dungeons where you shoot a target and it drops a bridge down or something like that. So the identity of an archer or a ranged person in your party might evolve over time as well, not just from a combat role, but from sort of interacting with the world in various ways, which would be pretty cool.
Yep.
That's it.
All right, that's
Archery
it. Now onto the
over.
Q&A. If there's anything you like or didn't like about some of the things we said, be sure to let us know. We read comments, we read Reddit posts, we read feedback forum, and we read Discord.
We cry.
What's that?
I said we cry, but it's good to hear both sort of confirmation that you agree with our vision and also where you don't agree, so that we can rethink where you don't agree, and we can potentially prioritize where you really do agree.
Yep.
So let us know.
Yep. All right, we'll take a quick break and then we'll be back. All right. Part 2, Q&A time. So that's me telling you that I'm recording now.
Part 2. Wait.
Yeah, that's a nice blur we've got going on there.
Super blurry.
Yeah.
Okay. Q&A. Okay, so this is a part of the Altacast where we go through your questions and hopefully answer them. As always, if your question is not here and you would like to ask a question, you can see the link in the description and we will answer it next Altacast.
Yep.
Cool beans. Question number 1. What is the locked setting lever for in the main menu? We've had the others unlocked, so when will that one unlock and what features will it have? This is a really funny question because I'm pretty sure the number of levers there was just how big the panel kind of worked out to be and just thrown in.
Yeah. We just wanted to be ready to have more settings, and we didn't at the start, so we started unlocking them as we felt we needed the real estate for it.
I think we have unlocked. We have increased the number.
We
unlocked one.
Yeah, we increased them a fair bit. One of the missing settings that will probably come at some point are graphic settings. So that's what that locked setting might be in the future.
It also very well could be the case that some of these settings, this doesn't answer the question at all, but it could be that some of these settings also appear in the launcher at some stage, so you can conveniently sort of tweak things on a 2D user interface if that is more your style. But nothing planned. Graphical settings, potentially audio settings as well. Choosing your microphone would be nice.
Yeah.
And basically the standard. Nothing too
fancy.
Fancy. Yeah. Okay. If journals get added before said wipe, could the contents of these journals not wipe? I'd love to keep track of every day when I log in and what I've written down and what I have saved. Journals are not a feature that we're working on right now. Journals are very, very, very. I'm going to say they're not coming before the forest. We have no plans to work on the journals before the forest. And our plan is to do a full wipe on the public outer servers when the forest comes out. As far as I'm aware, our plan is not to wipe inventories on any other server.
The world might have to wipe on private servers just because of the inclusion of the forest. And
but inventories and
for the specific question on the journal side, we're not 100% sure how writing down in your journal is going to operate. If we come up with if we have a nice interfacing method for you to kind of write like your own notes about it without kind of holding a giant pen essentially, which is what the controllers kind of are, then we might allow it. Like it might end up looking a bit more like typing. I'm not sure. Maybe you can put a page through a typewriter, type out your journal note, and then you can plonk that into your journal.
That page. We haven't settled on the design of journals. One of the functionalities of journals will be basically being able to collect pages for your favorite recipes or whatever. So, for instance, if you're on the go and cooking, you can have the recipe for your favorite stew or whatever. We would like to have more. Sorry, I was just going to say.
It's hard to do it with the delay because I start speaking in the break and then
I'm speaking. We hope that we can have some more custom content, whether that be kind of like the ability for you to put out a wanted poster or a quest for someone else, 100 gold to go get this or whatever, and then pin that up, or even typing something. But at this stage, we haven't started working on it, and we haven't finalized designs or researched the best way to do a typing in VR. So it's hard for us to confirm exactly how that stuff will work.
Yeah.
What were you gonna say, Boramy?
I was gonna say that some player-related things might be displayed on your journal, because journals are probably gonna be something that everybody has one of, that they can access, and so we might end up displaying some facts about you on there, that you might want to be like kind of like your progress with heart flowers, or
it could update a cache of your experience when you interact with the experience shrine or something.
Yeah, you can keep a note of your experience.
And it would be pretty cool if you did it and then it faded out over the next week or something, so that it's evident that it's old information and you have to go to that shrine to update it. But it's still a reference there for you when you walk away 5 minutes later and you're like, crap, what was my archery at? And,
I guess an important thing is, we don't really want it to override some of the location-based things, to say the least. So, like, it only tracking your experience levels once, like, after you visit the shrine, and keeping that imprint is kind of a nice way to do it.
Cool. Will you guys make any blades attachable to the two sides of Iron Knuckle other than spikes? So I'm assuming there's like a D shape knuckle.
Yeah, there's the metal D shape.
And I guess the question is, will we allow blades to come out the side? I guess what they're going for is like a classic pirate.
It's like a pirate's dagger type thing. Yeah, we might do that. Yeah.
Are you guys planning on doing a full wipe when releasing the forest?
A very close to full wipe. There's still a bit of debate as to whether skills will be worth wiping, just because we're not really changing anything about them. But aside from that, you can expect your inventory and your world to definitely wipe when the forest comes out, if you're playing on a public server.
If you're playing on the outer servers.
Yeah, if you're playing on the outer servers,
Yeah. The outer servers, we may be, we may see some changes to those servers as well. We're still, it's going to be a big occurrence when the forest comes out, and If you're not on a public outer server, then all you need to know is that there's quite a chance your world will be wiped, but you'll also be informed of this. We'll tell you when the next update's going to be, the forest update, so that you can make sure to move stuff out of bookcases into your inventory or whatever, and sort of prioritize what does transfer and what doesn't transfer. So I wouldn't stress about that in the meantime.
Yeah.
Are you guys planning to add more food types, cooking methods, like, for example, bread making, and or revamping the food system to add systems like rotting and food preservations like drying or salting?
I mean, it wouldn't be really a revamp of the food system. It'd be kind of like an extension of it.
Yeah.
With rotting and food preservation. There are things that we talked about and that we want them to be a part of the design. We just haven't been spending too much time working on the cooking and eating side of things, but we definitely want it. You might see, like, there's some hunger changes that we're kind of interested in exploring, to make it a little bit more, to make something high value worthwhile eating when you can otherwise have lots of low value food items. Is the
right now, if I have 1 million pumpkin chunks, there's no reason for me to ever actually eat anything other than pumpkin chunks, which means us adding in a new food type or a new food item, it's kind of like the amount of work you put in to get that pumpkin compared to the payoff. Chances are any new food types aren't going to drastically beat that, and if they do, then everyone's just going to move to that new food type. And so we really want there to be a reason why, similar to the archery things we talked about today, reasons why one person might choose to go with one sort of choice and someone else might choose to go with a different choice of food. And so there'll be pros and cons of different food, hopefully. In terms of preservation, that's something we've wanted pretty much since we talked about food initially, and I think different bag types might even tie into that, where you can have maybe a bag that's specifically designed for fresh food, for fresh fruit, so you store your fruit in there and you're not going to be worried about it going bad. But if you're just throwing it in your usual backpack, then maybe it'll go off. If journals do get added, would you hold a feather quill and write and draw, or would it be a virtual keyboard? Again, we haven't tried.
It's kind. I think we kind of covered that one with the previous one.
I would love to try out a feather quill. There's lots of questionable aspects about how much articulation are you really going to get on a page, but also then we have to worry about the technical side of saving and networking to sync that page up with other people and stuff like that. So, and also potentially issues with people drawing all sorts of things. And something we do want, actually, a bit of a spoiler, is we would like stuff like community notice boards or whatever in the future, where you can potentially pin a page up to share it with other people, whatever. And again, we don't really want we got to at least take into account the potential that people are going to use this for malicious reasons. But no news. It's not in the works yet. Hopefully we'll have more information later. This is a long question.
Are you talking about the one with 11 votes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Adding to fast travel, it takes away from the experience of traveling around the map. This person is suggesting that there's a magician sort of skill that allows portals to be created to get to different key areas, and maybe these are expensive or limited to being used once every real life 24 hours. I definitely think those things aren't off off the table. Again, as we talked about last week, if you missed it last week, we talked about traveling around the map. We don't want to undervalue travel. We want people to experience the world, but we don't want things to feel sluggish. And stuff like the teleport potion is obviously an instance of you just skipping straight through that travel aspect. And maybe there will be forms of portals or magic in the future, and maybe there will be specific roles or people who can facilitate that for the rest of their group. It's not off the table, but it's definitely something that we'll be weighing up with all the other options of fast travel.
We have some I have some ideas on how to balance this with other things, but it's a matter of we just need to get to implementing before we can really lock down and say that and divulge some of these things.
Will you add thirst to the game? If you add some kind of tavern later on, it would make more sense, sitting in for a drink after a long journey.
Thirst?
Does beer make you thirstier, or does it quench your thirst? That's the ultimate question within this question.
Like, if you keep drinking beer, you'll be all right.
Sure. Yeah.
So thirst kind of balances the line between being a pretty hardcore survival game and just being kind of like a casual survival game. We're feeling a lot of things asking us for some of these new survival stats. So thirst is whilst initially I think when we first came up with Township Tale we said no to thirst because we thought it was too hardcore. The longer we spend, the more we start to lean in various ways and open ourselves up to some ideas.
From my perspective, the concern about thirst is especially if water is super abundant, it can, and even hunger can feel like this, and hopefully some of the changes we'll be making to hunger will actually alleviate this as well, is that sometimes it can feel super arbitrary in where it's kind of like, well, yes, I can walk over to this stream and dunk my head in it, but like, why is this game asking me to dunk my head in a stream every 10 minutes just for the sake of it? I don't really want to carry around water just because for no real reason.
I can think of a way to make it function. It's just a matter of, if it'll work in practice. So it's something we have to experiment with. There's some of the ways that it ties with hunger that I think we can work into something. So we'll see. Maybe if it's a nice design, it can work.
The important thing is making it not just another a duplication of the food stat, but instead making it so that it has its own unique important place in the game. Adding boats or other type of traveling on rivers/sea. I think we talked about this a little bit last week, but I think we do want to experiment with water
vehicles
stuff, boats, boats, rafts, whatever. It's not something that's coming super soon, and there's no ETA on it, but it's definitely something we will experiment with.
And we're probably not going to have a sea in the traditional senses of sea.
Yes, it's not going to take you.
Yeah, you're not going to be on a. I mean, at least not for Township Tale 1. Maybe Township Tale 2.
Wow, I'm scared. Do you think pottery is a possibility for the future?
I saw this question and I feel like that my brain went through like the entire discussion in 2 seconds about it. The act of creating a pot is something that's definitely possible with VR. Like I know we've seen it with kind of it's the same thing as a lathe essentially. It's like a vertical lathe where you have a mount and you just kind of carve out and create a shape. It's possible to kind of procedurally generate that mesh as well based off of your hands. The key thing where it kind of might fall through is on the functionality side of the pot, in terms of filling it with water, for example, and how that's supposed to work on a something that you've procedurally created. So, like, I know it's possible for us to generate the collision for it. So maybe you can just use it to kind of hold things, but then again, like, physics holding things on a multiplayer online game isn't super well.
Physics containers are a nightmare. Like, enclosed shapes. Usually they end up being like 50 colliders to try and
like safeguard and like the whole thing. So they might be, it might be like an aesthetic feature that we might have in the future. We'll see.
Yeah, if you can put flowers in it or something, that would be cool.
Like if there's a way for us to recognize the mouth of the pot that you've made and place flowers nicely in it.
Yep.
There's just lots of things to consider with tying in the functionality with the dynamic side of pottery creation. Also
making it feel worthwhile.
I mean, I can see it being like an idle thing that people just kind of do, experimenting with. It's like a small art thing.
Cool. The next is Alta is Portuguese for high. Cool. Another currency for trade stores, say buy 5 bars of Valium for 2,000 cooked pumpkin. There's two interesting things to this, I find. One is the idea that it kind of removes the concept of a currency, which can make understanding values way more difficult. Because you've put up this offer, 5 bars of Valium for 2,000 cooked pumpkin, and I have to go, well, I know 5 bars of Valium generally goes for, say, 50 silver. I know that, and I know 5,000 or 2,000 cooked pumpkin is around 500 cooked meat or whatever, but doing the conversion in my head is really difficult because I've never kind of done a trade between them. Whereas if I know 5 bars of Valium is this many coins and 2,000 cooked pumpkin would be this many coins, then I can do the conversion in my head a little bit more easily. But the second thing is, and this is something we actually really struggled design-wise with when discussing, is how would you, say you have 5 bars of Valium, how would you put them in the trade deck, so it's easy to say what you're selling because you've literally got it and you put it in the trade deck, but how do you say what you're buying or what you're exchanging it for? Especially if you're wanting to exchange it for an item that you don't have. Like if you have cooked pumpkin, we could make it so that you put Valium in this dock and 1 cooked pumpkin in that dock, and that's how you determine the exchange item. But say you want a rare plant that you don't have, there's no way for you to say, I'm selling this Valium for 1 of this plant. How do you select that? How do you choose that without having a drop down of every single item in the game or a search bar or something? Like, it's quite difficult.
We kind of had a solution for that when we
did actually. I just remember we talked about like encyclopedias of pages.
So
where you can
pretty much whenever someone discovered an item, it would get added to an assortment in the library of books, so that if you're looking for something, you can grab that and find it. And because it gets discovered by people in the server, you know that someone might have it in some respect, that it's been accessed before.
It won't be in the library if no one's found it, so you won't get to see you won't get spoilers of items that no one knows about yet. And then I theoretically would add it to my journal, head to the trade deck, and then go, okay, I want to sell this to Valium. And maybe once we have that, we might have buying stations and selling stations as separate things. As to whether we ever have trade stations, which is literally these items for these items, again, it goes back to point number 1, and just whether it's worth sacrificing the clarity of the economy for that. But we'll see. I do think buying would stimulate the economy crazily, though.
Yeah.
Where are we up to? When you presumably have made the new assets for the forest, will you do another pass over the existing areas?
It's possible they'll get some visits. The assets for the forest aren't that unique. There's a couple that look a bit different, but it varies up a bit. Like some of the encounter based stuff we really want to keep on the forest side of things, because that's where you're going for your content. In terms of doing a pass over existing areas, it's not super likely, just because a lot of the art that the other areas would require is not necessarily functional art, and that's where most of the art is going in the forest. If that makes any sense.
It's like it's also a matter of priority. At this stage, we'd rather add new areas than refresh older areas. But I imagine they'll get changes at some stage. Just it's a matter of priority.
There's definitely some like visual changes in terms of the way the world is built that will happen in the future, but not necessarily because of the forest. They'll just happen because we want the place to look better and use be more iconic in various ways. A bit like just make everything be a bit more of a landmark when it comes to how you feel about it.
How did the OG members of Alta first meet? So Boramy, Tima, and I started Alta, and we met each other at a job.
Yeah, that we worked at before. That Tima was producer of. He hired us for that. We worked on it. Like Joel and I worked there at separate times for the most part, so we didn't actually really know each other. I think I worked 2 days with Joel there, and I completely forgot his existence after he left for that.
What?
Yeah, you were there for like when you did the UI thing.
Oh, we're talking about different jobs.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
No, that was the job I was talking about, and then you said Timo was producer, and then I thought we were talking about the So we met at a job, and Boramy was before I joined, and Boramy left soon after I joined, completely unrelated. And then, but after that, we then moved to a different company. All three of us.
Yeah. It was a company that Tima owned that he hired us to at.
So Tima hired us to. So we went from briefly all working at one job to all working at a different job. And then it was during that job that Boramy and I firstly got to know each other, but secondly started working on Township Tale on the side, and then it showed promise, and so we formed Alta as a company that would solely work on a Township Tale. And in the process, through that other job, we also met Timo. Timo was hired to that other company as well, and so we stole him. And then Victor joined, Serena joined, Sebastian, Tiana joined, Sol joined. Like we've grown from there. So.
Yep.
Will you add different currencies to the shop instead of USD? Potentially. It's something we would like to explore. I do think it's nice to not have, especially subscriptions, at the whim of the fluctuating economies, where 1 week it might be cheaper, 1 month it might be cheaper, 1 month it might be a bit more expensive. It would be nice if it was consistent. It's something we'll need to look into more. It's something we've discussed. I think there have been some issues. I'd need to talk to Timo, to be honest. He was chatting to our payment providers about it. So, yeah.
Yep. All right, I think we're just about running out of time, so I think we should wrap it up.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching Altacast 13. Hope you enjoyed it. As always,
Link to Q&A.
yeah, hit the link for the next Q&A. And yeah, we'll see you next time, and maybe you'll see some archery changes coming soonish. Right.
Don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the bell. Is that how they do it?
They say to hit the bell, but I don't know why you hit the bell. I think it's yeah.
Don't hit the bell if your phone vibrates too much. It's good to not have unnecessary.
I know
distractions
all those channels that Timo subscribed to on the Township Tale channel. He's hit the bell on as well, so it's impossible to sort through comments. Because literally every video that everyone ever uploads appears on our thing. But yeah.
Anyway, have a great day.
All right. Bye bye.
See you soon.
See ya.